Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I think today we are going to have the session. A lot of people are asking today also biscuit. Mr. Abhishek Krishna, today there is no biscuit. We are going to give you cream biscuit today. So we are going to have this session today. We have one special guest who is going to join us, and we are going to discuss mental health. So there are like couple of ways we can go about it. One, you guys can ask questions in the comments. If you want to ask a very important question, then probably please use super chat and then ask the question. Because I myself will be asking a lot of questions to her. So I may not be focusing on everything, but I'll try my best to focus on most of your questions. And secondly, uh, this is a serious issue, but that's okay. I am handling it, so it will be funny also sometimes. And we will see what happens. If you find this session is boring, then probably you guys can take the number of this particular person, and then you can get the counseling done from this person only. So that is the entire agenda. I'll invite our guest now. So right now, let me just add her to the stream. Hello, Gayatri. You are on the stream right now. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi,
And
Rajsekhar. Thank you so much for having me here.
I think now that we are done with the formalities, we can be just shameless and talk to each other now, I think.
Definitely. Yes.
So, for those of you who are like curious, so Gayatri and me, we were classmates in the counseling course which I have done after my MBA. And now you should not ask why did I do counseling course after MBA. The main agenda was if I don't get a job, I should counsel myself and I feel better about myself. So that is the reason why I joined the counseling course. And I met Gayatri there. And after that, I became a stand-up comedian. But she's still in the same profession. She's a psychologist now. So Gayatri, what happened after that? You could have become whatever you want to. Why did you choose this profession?
So I think that was something that was very close to my heart right from the time I was a child. The mind has always been a very big mystery to me, right? And possibly not just me, to a lot of people as well. Because this mind has such a huge untapped power, right? It can make you feel very hopeful. It can take you to the depths, to the deepest darkest depths of depression. It can make you want to take your own life. It can make you write poetry. It can make you fall in love, right? So you
You
see
can
that
also add comedy.
things
Like
that
mind can
happen.
also make you write comedy also. Like if in case,
See,
just
exactly,
in.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
So it can do so much, right? And there's so much that we don't know about the mind yet, and it's always interesting to read about it, to study about it, to you're always learning more about it, right? So any
So
person that you interact with, there's always something new that you learn.
so when we did that course, now that 1 year itself, I felt I learned a lot about myself and about mind. And then after that, I thought I should not go any further because if I go, I'll die only. But you have done like after that also you have done a formal course. Now you are working as a psychologist,
Yeah,
and you are working as a psychologist in India, where mental health is a taboo. A lot of people don't go to counselors. That is
true.
treated as a taboo, right? Like for those of you who are watching and don't know English, taboo means not the actor taboo. Taboo means it's like what do you call this?
Stigma.
Stigma. Yeah, a lot of my fans, I don't think they know stigma also, Gayatri, but that's okay. We'll work with stigma right now. Yeah. So like it's been 8 years now. You are a psychologist.
Yes, almost 10 years.
10 years. Oh, sorry. I did not count 2020 and 2021. So okay,
Those
it's
two count. They
almost.
count even more. Yes.
So, okay, so 10 years, what is the change you have seen in people's mind? Are they coming to counselors now, or are they still having some stigma about this mental health? Because a lot of people don't talk about it.
True, true. But I think over the last decade or so, I do see that there's better awareness, right? So more people are comfortable using the terms mental health. They're comfortable using the terms depression, right? So conversations around mental health are a little more mainstream. Yes, there's still a lot more scope for improvement. There is still a long way that we have to go, but that journey is starting. We're all on that journey, and I think that's good, right?
So,
Whether it's parents, whether it's adults, there's a lot more awareness now.
okay, okay. So now, tell me one thing. So when we were doing that counseling course, I think I just finished my MBA. I think you were also doing your graduation at that point of time, and
Yes.
we were exposed to this something called mental health and all the issues of mental health pretty early, right? Uh, in
True.
fact, I feel that is too late now. I feel because I think even kids also should be made aware of mental health. But right now, if you see, a lot of people are talking about it. Social media. Do you think social media
Mm-hmm.
has helped to take the mental health issues to the public, or do you think that has hampered this?
So I think there are two sides to that coin there, because definitely there has been some conversations around mental health because of social media, right? There's one person who talks about it and shares it, it reaches a slightly wider audience, right? But also because of social media, there's also a lot of misusing of certain terms, right? Every second person says, I'm in depression, I'm clinically depressed, when it doesn't necessarily have to be a clinical depression that they're experiencing, right? So it could be certain levels of sadness, but it gets mislabeled as depression. So there's a lot of
Oh,
that as well floating around. But somewhere I think it's worth it if it's still improving awareness and kind of reaching the people, reaching the masses, and helping mental health come to the forefront a little bit.
so
It's a
how do
small
I know
price to
if I
pay.
how do I know if I have sadness or depression? How do I know? I think I felt every time I was sad, I was depressed only. Like, how do I
Right.
know what is the difference
So
between
it's
sadness and depression?
So that is not something that we expect everyone to know, right? Because not everyone is a licensed mental health practitioner, right? But when you feel that there are parts of your life that are getting affected, right? So we look at three specific areas. One is your personal life, one is your social life, and one is your occupation or your academic life, right? So if your sadness, if your irritability, if any particular symptom that's worrying you, if it starts to impact any of these three areas, that's when you know that, okay, maybe I need to seek professional guidance, or maybe talk to someone and try to figure out what is happening. It's not just a phase at that point of time.
Okay. So now, let's say, for example, I'm going through some sadness for a prolonged period of time, let's say for 2 weeks. So now I'm really surprised that you guys did not include hair fall also as one of the symptoms, but that's okay. So let's say if
It
I'm going through
actually
some,
is.
oh, it is actually, so you think I lost my hair because of my depression only? Shit, man.
So there has to be, it's a cluster of symptoms that need to be present. So one symptom in isolation is never enough to be classified as a disorder. So even just sadness is not enough for it to be depression. You need to have sadness and a couple of other symptoms for us to be able to diagnose
Tell me
that.
points, na? Tell me pointers like, let's say, for example, sadness, and
Okay.
what are the other symptoms which could tell that, okay, this sadness is a
It could
depression, like,
signal some. All right. So,
yeah,
so the basic red flags that you're looking at is definitely, one is low mood, right? So you're
uh,
feeling sad for most of the day, for most parts of the last 2 weeks. So we look at the
okay,
time period of last 2 weeks, right? So last 14 to 15 days, that is what we're looking at and evaluating when we want to be able to see if this is a clinical issue or not, right? So there's low mood.
okay,
There is possibly lack of motivation and enthusiasm to do things, right? There's also a reduction in engaging in activities that you used to like earlier, right? So everyone has
okay.
specific hobbies, specific activities that they've
Let's
enjoyed
say
doing.
if I like making people laugh and then I don't enjoy it later on, then I think that could be a symptom, right?
It could be a symptom. Yes, it
But that
definitely
alone
could
cannot be
be.
a symptom. That's what you're saying. That
Not
alone
in
cannot be a symptom.
isolation.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay,
not in isolation. So it has to be
fine, fine.
present with a lot of other things. Just the way you can't diagnose somebody who's experiencing fever, you can't tell them that you have typhoid, right? Because fever is not the
Yeah,
only symptom. There have to be a lot of other symptoms as well,
yeah. Okay,
similar
okay,
to that.
okay.
Right. So
Now,
going back to the symptoms,
yeah,
so we're talking about low mood, you're talking about low energy, we're talking about low motivation and enthusiasm, as well as withdrawing from social interaction, right? So you start avoiding phone
yeah.
calls, you try to make excuses to not meet people. All of that starts to become the cluster that we look at.
Okay, okay. So, I have to tell you one incident, okay? So, like in 2014, 2013, when I started doing the stand-up comedy as a full-time professional, and obviously it's a tough profession, right? So
Hmm.
after like 3, 4 months, I started feeling all the symptoms which you told. Like I was like, wow, but I did not know whether I have to call it depression or just a prolonged sadness, or I have to blame it on the
Hmm.
profession. It took me a lot of time to
True.
realize, okay, maybe this needs some help. Only when I spoke to the
Correct. Correct.
counselor, then I
Hmm.
realized, okay,
Hmm.
all these things, I need to do something about these things. And that is the reason why I wanted to do this session also today with you, because last 1.5 years have been very tough uh, for a lot of us, actually, because we are going
Correct.
through some global pandemic. That is one. And second thing, I think lot of people are messaging on Instagram. So I did like a couple of videos on mental health, and a lot
Hmm.
of people are messaging me on Instagram. A lot of people keep talking to me. So why don't you do the series of it? But then I realized that if I keep doing the series of it, I'm not an expert. Like if though I did the counseling course, I cannot be at the same level of expertise like you. So I thought maybe I'll just
Hmm.
call you and I'll have a discussion with you. And because last 1.5 years has been very tough, and there are like a lot of uncertain times which are going on. So we need to know
Yes.
how to go about all these things. That is the reason we are doing this session. So if you guys have any questions, you guys can keep asking it. But we'll also know from Gayathri that. So let's say, for example, in 10 years back when you started this profession, and now you are doing it, what is the difference you see in the perception of the people about counselors or psychologists?
Okay. So I think a lot more people know what a psychologist is, right? When I was studying psychology, a lot of people would ask me, "What are you doing?" And I would say, "I'm studying psychology," and they'd say, "What is psychology?" Right? So that basic awareness of there's something like mental health, and there's a field that actually addresses mental health was very alien to a lot of people. And now when I tell people I'm a psychologist, people are able to understand what it is, right? People are
Yeah.
able to say, "Oh, I know what that is," and then they have follow-up questions for that. So I think that is the
Okay.
biggest difference that I've seen.
Change. Okay. 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 Oh, I have one more question related to that. What is the difference between psychologist and psychiatrist?
All right. So a psychiatrist is a person who's done their MBBS, their medicine, and they've done their MD in psychiatry. Right. So a
Oh, okay.
psychologist doesn't have a medical degree. So therefore, a psychiatrist can prescribe medication if it's required, but a psychologist will do only therapy. They don't go into the medicine aspect of it.
So basically, like to put it in like simple terms, psychiatrist can prescribe medicine and psychologist cannot.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now the main question is, when do a psychologist know that okay, this particular person needs medication? When will a psychologist know?
All
So if
right.
the psychologist
So
knows, will the psychologist refer to a psychiatrist? That is the question.
all right. So, ideally, a psychologist is supposed to be doing evaluation and also refer out for a psychiatric evaluation, so the doctor can evaluate and take a call as to whether medication is required or not. But with a lot of, there are certain conditions, there are certain medical conditions that require medical intervention. Right, so they are
Okay.
not really going to improve with only therapy and with only learning certain coping strategies. Right, so
Okay.
so that one category is going to go directly to a psychiatrist for evaluation, but there are also a lot of other conditions where slightly milder forms of it don't necessarily require medication, right? So if there's a
Okay.
lot of effort that is coming in from the person, if they're ready to make change and they're putting in that effort to make that change with
Okay.
and being motivated, then they can kind of improve with therapy alone. There are sometimes where therapy and medication may kind of help, right? So when it's slightly moderate to severe in intensity, that's when both start to help.
Okay.
So it always
Now,
has to be hand in hand.
okay. So now one more thing I want to ask you is, out of 100 cases which require a psychologist or a psychiatrist, out of 100 cases, how many people would actually require medication out of 100?
Okay, so I think especially in the last couple of years since the pandemic has begun, I think a majority of the people still would not necessarily require medication because it's a lot of adjustment issues that's happening, a lot of
Yeah.
stress and
Yeah.
anxiety that's happening. So it may not necessarily always require medical intervention, but it's important to keep an eye on how I'm feeling, right? So today I
Okay.
may not require medication, but that doesn't mean I may not require medication for the rest of my life, right? Maybe 3 months later, something else happens and it triggers a worse reaction in me. That time I may
Yeah.
require medication, right?
Okay.
So at any given point of time, at least 70-75% of us don't necessarily need medication, but we need some kind of intervention to be able to help us deal with what's happening.
Okay. So you remember when we were in counseling, Aliquaza used to tell us every now and then that you need to keep asking yourself two questions. What am I thinking? How am I feeling?
How am
You
I
remember?
feeling? Yes,
So this,
yes. And that's
so
very
I,
important.
yeah, that's a very important question because I realized when pandemic started last year, no, I was going through all the course content which we had at that time, and I was like going through
Mm-hmm.
it just to make a video, And that time I
Mm-hmm.
saw these two questions: What am I thinking? How am I feeling? I realized that it's such an important question, Like at any given point of time
Yes.
in a day, the moment I ask that question, I will know whether I am in a bad mood or a good mood. So
Or do I
that
need
is
to
one
do
question.
something to stabilize
Uh,
myself
so
then?
that is
Yes.
one thing I wanted to ask you, Gayatri. So, do you think awareness of what you're feeling and what you're thinking helps us in the long run, or it's like, let's say, for example, a lot of physical diseases we are not aware of them, right? Like when they are growing
Mm-hmm.
inside our body, we are not aware of them
We're not
until
aware.
we go to the doctor. But
Mm.
mental health issues are not like that, right? So at subconscious level, we are still aware of it, or I don't know. I'm just thinking
So
out
there are
loud. So
certain issues that we can become aware of, right? So there are certain issues that are not necessarily something that's going to tell us that I have a negative thought, and if I have a negative thought, I can identify it, right? Most times, if I'm aware, if I'm being mindful of it. But then if I'm also hearing voices, so that is I'm distant from reality, right? So I can't be consciously aware of that, right? So there are specific disorders where I can be aware of it and specific disorders where I can't. But if I'm able to consciously ask myself, what am I feeling, how am I feeling, if I'm able to evaluate that on a daily, maybe twice a day, thrice a day, if I'm able to check it, it helps me catch things earlier, right? And then I can start working on it a little earlier as well.
okay. So now there's a
So
lot
it
of
helps in
words
the
which are
present and the long run. Sorry, to answer your question, it helps in the
no,
present
it's
as
okay.
well as the long run.
Okay, okay. So now there are a lot of words being thrown on social media, like anxiety, depression, disorder, mental disorders, and all those things. Now, what is the
Yes.
right way? Like, because these are like too overwhelming. Yeah, you
Hmm.
understand? No, like I know it increases our vocabulary, but also it increases our attention. So,
True.
what should
True.
we do? How should we take it? Like, because every second video I see is about anxiety. Now, what do they
Correct.
mean when they say anxiety? Are they talking about depression or are they talking about the day-to-day anxiety? Because I feel anxious even when I do a show. I feel anxious.
Correct.
Like
Correct.
if I
So
talk
I
to my
think
nephew, I
it's
feel anxious. So it's just sorry. I'm just telling.
so I think that's extremely subjective, right? Because three people who have the very same experience can all respond differently to it, right? So
Okay.
it's very subjective. So when we are also talking to people who are saying they're feeling depressed or who are saying they're not feeling okay, it's my responsibility to not uh, ignore them or dismiss what they're saying, right? So I will always stay a little sensitive to what they're saying, right? And then also guide them to appropriate resources, right? To be able to seek help because they could actually be going through something, right? So
Yeah.
it's not up to me to decide if they're actually depressed or not, if they're actually anxious or not, right? So I'm not doing the diagnosis over there, me as a layman, right? So if I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
really a clinician at that point of time, I'm in no place to judge and say yes they are depressed or no they're not depressed, right? For all I know, they could be depressed, right? So they could have actually experienced a traumatic event or whatever it may be, right? So anyone who brings up certain words like that could be certain triggers, ideally direct them to a professional who's going to be able to evaluate and help.
Okay.
That will really help them.
Cool. So now we'll move to the second segment of the interview, and this is one segment which I brought a pen also and book also. So I thought I'll write down when you are telling. Okay. So this segment will focus on how to take care of our mental health, because right now I feel because a lot of us are at home and we are uncertain about what is going to happen in the future.
True.
Like if you take
True.
my own profession, I don't know when I'm going to start out with live shows. You know I may do online shows. I'll have a good time. But at the end of the day, if you see for a stand-up comedian, na, live shows are more important. I may have my
You need to
Instagram
feed
account.
off that energy.
Yeah,
Yes. Mm.
so there's a lot of uncertainty going
Understandable.
on. And if that is true for me, I'm sure a lot of people who are like software employees and students, everybody is going through the same thing. So how to take care of our mental health? Are there any steps? How can we take care of our mental health? And how do we know if my
Right.
mental health is at optimum level?
All right. So I think first and foremost, you need to look after your physical health, right? Because
Physical health, okay.
yes, you're not going to really have a foundation for your mental health if you don't do that, right? So you
Okay.
need to eat well, you need to rest well, and you need to have enough physical activity during the day, right?
Okay.
So eat healthy food, eat preferably avoid junk food, right? Stay hydrated. Try to get at least 35 to 40 minutes of physical activity during the day, right? So even if it is just a walk, try to see if you can do that 5 days in a week, right? For
So
even
if
30
if I
minutes.
if I sleep for 35 minutes in the afternoon, that counts as a physical. No, okay, fine. You meant like exercise steps. Sorry for that. Sorry for the bad joke. I know. I think.
See, if you're dreaming about exercise, that also unfortunately doesn't count.
Okay,
Right? So you
fine.
need to actively get your heart pumping. That is very important.
So basically,
Right?
exercise is definitely one part of it, right? So that
Yeah.
is one. You
Exercise
need
is
to.
one part of it. Food is another. Food intake is
Food is
another
another.
part of it,
Okay.
and rest. Right. So sleeping, rest, leisure activities, that is also a very important part of your physical
So,
health.
lack of sleep is also a symptom.
It could be. It could be.
Yeah, see, these are the kind of comments I'm getting. For 20 rupees, he's saying Pepsi, RSM Mama sexy. Like, these are the comments, no? Which I get, and I'm like, it just disturbs my mental health. Yeah. Like, I don't know whether I'm sexy or not. Some people call me Brad Pitt also. What can I do? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just distracting. This, I'm
So is
just
your
telling.
perspective there. Just choose to believe it. You'll feel
Choose to
happy.
believe it. Okay, okay, fine, fine. Okay, so let's get back to the main topic, which is so exercise is one thing, good food and rest and lack of sleep. Um, so there's a
Can also
term,
be an issue. Yes.
yeah, there's a term which a lot of people keep using called insomnia. So there is that not necessarily like because if I don't sleep for 2 days in a row, can I
Hmm.
diagnose myself with insomnia? No, no.
So ideally, what we look at when we're looking at a diagnosis of insomnia, trying to label it, we're not looking at the number of hours that you've slept, but rather how you feel when you wake up. Right? Do you feel
Uh,
refreshed? Do you feel energetic? Do you feel very rested? Right? That will indicate whether you've had enough sleep or not. Right? So it's not a certain number of
nobody
hours. And
nobody
sorry, go
told
ahead.
this point, Gayatri, like you told. And like just so it's not about sleep
That's
number of hours, but how you feel when you wake up. So that's such a
yes.
great point here. And I always felt I should need more sleep, but that's okay. Like yeah, yeah. Okay, continue, please. Tell me other
Yes. So
factors.
like,
Which how can we take care of
so
it?
those three become the core of your physical health, right? In addition to that, staying social becomes very important, which is even more important right now with the pandemic going on, right? So any form of virtual communication with family, with friends, with colleagues, classmates, it doesn't matter who, find an excuse to get in touch with a person, right? Even if you don't really have anything solid to say or ask them or whatever, pick up any small excuse to pick up the phone, to have a video call, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Connect with people, right? In the same lines, you could also possibly join an online course, not necessarily to learn a specific skill, but to socialize, right? To meet people who are interested in a similar skill or
Yeah,
activity or
yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
may
yeah.
be, right? So staying social
Okay,
becomes extremely, extremely important now. Keeping
okay,
yourself busy with things that you enjoy doing, right? So invariably,
okay.
a lot of people tend to keep their day busy with work, right? So
Uh,
they'll work 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, and they don't have time for anything else. That's something that you can do only for a short amount of time. Try to avoid that for a prolonged period of time, right? Because you need to make time for things that you enjoy doing, whether it's a hobby, whether it's just sitting and reading the newspaper, whether it's sitting and staring at your plants. It doesn't really matter what it is, but you need to have that kind of time in the day as well.
Okay, that is such an important point again. Like, don't just keep yourself busy, but keep yourself busy with things which you enjoy doing. That's such a
Yes.
great point, yeah. Because I see a lot of my friends; they're always busy, and on the outside it appears as if like they're taking care of their mental health pretty well. But then again, if you see, I can see because I was also one time like I did all the course and all. No? I could see that there are like certain elements where they're getting tired, they're getting irritated very quickly, or they're taking offense. I think maybe that comes because of the pressure of keeping yourself busy, but not with what you love, but as a
Yes.
responsibility or as a duty.
True.
Okay, so
True.
somebody asked a question about how to take care of mental health in an arranged marriage. We'll come back to that question a little later. But I'll take that question. Don't worry. Whoever has posted that question, I'll take that question. But we will go ahead with the same thing, which is how to take care of our mental health. Now, pandemic is a different thing, right? Like now, whatever you have said till now, I'm sure we can do this even when there is no pandemic, right?
Yes.
So we have to do it even though there is no pandemic.
Even though there's a
Like
pandemic, whether there is
yeah,
or not, we have to do that.
yeah, like physical health or the exercise, sleep, connect with people, busy with things which you enjoy doing. All these things are very important even when there is no pandemic. But during pandemic, I noticed, which I myself had gone through some time back, was that a lot of people are losing our loved ones, and
Mm.
there's a lot of grief and pain and sadness around death, which is happening. So how do you deal
True.
with that? Because as it is, all these things are, screwing up with our mental health. Now there is also a loved one who died. So how do you handle
Right.
that?
Correct. So I think they start becoming very difficult periods for us because human beings by nature did not really evolve to deal with this kind of stress for such a prolonged period of time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Living
Totally.
in the pandemic was stressful. Now
Yeah,
when you've lost somebody that's really close to you, it adds to
yeah,
that, right?
yeah, yeah,
And there is no right or wrong way to grieve the death of somebody, right?
yeah, yeah. Of course.
There's no way of saying, hey, you're grieving wrong, or that's not the way to react, because each
Yeah,
person is going to grieve in their own way, right?
yeah,
So allow them to do that, right? So it's important to be able to acknowledge the emotions that you're going through, because we go through a variety of different emotions through that entire grieving process, right? And it also differs in terms of the amount of time that people take to come to terms with it, to come to terms with the reality of having to live their life without that person in their
yeah,
life.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And some people could take 6 months, some people could take about a year. It completely depends on each individual person. And trying to get somebody to get over the loss or to get over the death is not really a very sensitive thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that really helps with this, once you've kind of come to terms with the loss, once you've got a little bit of closure, is to be able to honor that person by continuing a specific habit or a behavior that keeps that person alive in you, right?
Maybe
So
ritual kind of a stuff, or some
yes,
ritual which reminds you
it
of
could
that
be a
particular
ritual.
person. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
it could be a ritual as well, right? So say that
Okay.
person that I've lost is very helpful by nature, right? Was very
Yeah.
helpful by nature. So then I
Yeah. Yeah.
incorporate that into my life. So every time I'm
Okay.
helping someone, it reminds me
Okay.
of that person also.
Oh.
It
Okay.
helps
Okay.
to keep
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
person.
Oh, that's a very nice way to continue the legacy of that person also in a way.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
True.
Cool. 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 And also, I want to ask, like you said, there are no timelines in overcoming the grief of loss of a loved one or something. Uh, at this point of times, though I know that mentally I'm okay when I'm doing other things, but there is
Mm.
definitely this grief which is overweighing me. At that time, only for this particular aspect of my life, that is to handle grief, can I talk to a
Mm.
counselor and take
Yes.
the help of a counselor instead of burdening my relatives or friends or whoever. I'm sure friends and
Yes.
relatives play their role, but do you think taking a professional help also will help
I
to
will
speed up the
always
process?
recommend that. I will always
Okay,
recommend that, right? And doesn't
okay,
necessarily have to be to speed up the process, but to
yeah,
kind of be able to deal with it in a healthy manner, right? So we're not
healthy
looking
man.
at reducing the time, but being able
Of
to
course,
look
yeah,
at lessening the impact, the negative impact on
yeah.
that person.
I think I worded it
Always.
wrong. Instead of saying reducing the time, I should have said reducing the pain in a healthy
Yes,
manner,
reducing
maybe.
the pain. Exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
time is okay, fine. Okay, so now that comes to the most important question, which I wanted to ask. Why should we go to a counselor? Why can't friends help us? Why can't relatives help us? Like I have a good
All right.
circle of friends. Why can't I take their help to deal with my mental health issues? Why should I go to a counselor? Why should I spend money to go to a counselor?
All right. So I'll ask you a very simple question, right? So
Yeah.
now I have a really bad tooth pain, right? And I'm not able to eat my dinner. I'm not able to eat any kind of food. I'm on a liquid diet. My cheek is all swollen, right? Now am I going to come to you and ask you to pull out my tooth, or will I go to a dentist to be able to tell me what's wrong and pull out my tooth?
I mean, you can come to
If
me. I'll
I come
just
to you, it'll be
punch
free.
you.
But then if I go to the dentist, I'll have to pay. Plus, you'll punch me. You'll be happy. My tooth will stop hurting. Yes. So whom would I go to?
Okay, okay. Fine, fine.
Right?
I
So
got the
I will
answer.
always go to a professional, because a professional is trained to be able to deal with certain issues, right? Irrespective of whether they've experienced that issue or not themselves. So the
Yeah, yeah.
dentist
True.
doesn't necessarily have to have had tooth issues to be able to diagnose my tooth problem and do whatever is required. Right? So a professional is going to be able to give you that specific input. You're also not overburdening the people around you, right? Your family members who may not really know how to deal with it sometimes. They're too close to the problem. They might be going through half the issue themselves as well.
Okay, so this is something which I want to probably ask you also, in a way, probably tell all the people who are watching also, is that, let's say, for example, if I'm going to some mental health issues and I only rely on one particular person or a friend or a relative, whoever it could be, and I think that, okay, this particular person is going to help me to go through this. I may not be wrong in that judgment because that person has been there for me in the past, but at the same
True.
time, by making that decision that okay, this person is going to help me, I think I'm putting extra pressure on this person also. Like if things
Yes.
don't go well, I think both of us would need a counselor. You know, instead of that,
True.
probably I can take his help or her help to help me to go to a counselor. and then probably deal with it in a professional way rather than just to put burden on family and
True,
relatives.
true. Because at the
Okay,
end
so
of the day, they also have their own life. So if something
they
does
have their
come up and they
own
can't
issues.
be there to support you, doesn't mean you have to go through all of that pain unnecessarily.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Cool, cool. Then, okay, finally, now we have come down to the last segment where we will also take some questions. Akash has asked a question about course. Is there any courses which people can take if they are interested in psychology? Can you just
All right.
tell them quickly?
So right now there are a lot of good courses that are being conducted online. So all of these MOOC courses, so they have basics in psychology, they have first aid in psychology courses. So a lot of those are free. There are also some courses where you need to pay a little bit for a certification, but those are really good courses. So I think there's a course on wellness, well-being, and happiness that's being conducted by Yale University. There are a couple of courses by Harvard University, right? So
Okay,
check out that entire library. There are quite a few courses.
okay.
It's important to be able to look at the faculty and look at the course content before really signing up for this, because there are a lot of fake courses as well that are going on, right? So make sure that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah.
some reference, you're reading through the reviews before you really sign up for it, right? So check
Okay,
out these online Coursera courses and the MOOC courses. You'll get an
okay.
idea of those.
Okay, now before going to last segment, which I have very important things to ask, we'll also take another question which one of the members asked, but I don't think that person wants to tell his or her name. So
Sure.
the question was, how do you deal with an arranged marriage which is not working out? Especially if you talk with elders, also it's not working out. So how do you deal with it? So that is the question which was asked.
All
So
right.
can you
So
share?
I think it's very important to understand that a relationship, any kind of relationship, there are two people in it, right? There are two parties to it, right? So to make something work, both parties need to put in effort, right? One person can't put in all of the effort and make the relationship become healthy. Both people need to put in that effort. So ideally, I would guide that person to some kind of couples therapy, marriage therapy, to be able to work through the issues. Sometimes the other partner is not always very ready and very receptive to suggestions of therapy and counseling. So that becomes a bit of an issue there. But one person can still work on it a little bit to reduce the hostility, to reduce the unhappiness that is there, right? So that's point number one. Point number two, focus on your life. Try to fill up your life. Try to make it a lot more wholesome, right? It doesn't necessarily mean finding another partner if that's not the way the marriage is as such, but being able to get other positive things into your life. So it could be a hobby, it could be a mentor, it could be friends, it could be work. It doesn't matter what their calling is, right? But being able to get positives from other things in their life is something that will continue to give them a little bit of strength to continue working on the marriage, right?
Okay,
And
so
identify the problem. That's always important, because you can't find a
okay, so I
solution without
think
identifying the problem.
that particular person also had added one more thing that therapies and discussions were not helping it since. So I think they're in a pretty bad space, maybe.
All right. So this can be kind of taken offline if they'd like to reach out offline. It might help a little bit instead of using this forum to
Yeah, 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 of course.
go deeper
So
into it.
yeah, yeah, probably I'll leave a mail ID in the description of your
Sure.
mail ID. Maybe you
Yes.
can take it up. Cool.
Yes.
Okay, so now we'll go to the most important segment, which is a lot of people, they don't know how to react to mental health issues of friends and relatives and family members. When I opened up about what I am going through to a person, the person told me to get married. That's the simplest suggestion he has given me. And a lot of people have given me like some random. So some people told me, hey, you can come out of it. Yeah, you yourself are a wonderful comedian. Why are you feeling sad? Like a lot of so how do you deal, how to talk to people who are going through mental health issues?
All right.
What are
So
the,
I
probably
think
you can say
first,
don'ts or do or don't or something like
the do's and don'ts of that kind of
that.
supportive communication at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I think number one is to be able to allow that person some amount of space to talk about what they're going through and validate those emotions that they're going through, right? So when you were sharing what was happening, and they just dismissed that and said, "Go get married, everything's going to become okay," you were
yeah,
feeling
yeah.
unheard. You were feeling like that person wasn't able to understand what you were actually going through, right?
Of
So
course,
being able
yeah,
to provide that space where people feel comfortable to share and talk without any kind of judgment, that is the best thing that you can do to anyone who's going through something, right? But
Okay.
on the same line, it's very important to remember not to force somebody to talk, right? You can't tell them you have to come and talk to me, right? They will share
Yeah.
when they want to share, right? So
Yeah.
remember that you need to create a safe environment for them to share, but you can't force
Yeah.
them to share, right? And
Yeah.
also when they are talking, when they are sharing, the conversation has to be about them, right? If I suddenly say, hey, I also know one colleague who's going through this, oh, even I went through that when I was 16 years old, 17 years old, whatever conversation, the focus comes on to me, but the conversation isn't about me, right? It's about the other person and the stuff that they are going through. So keep that focus on them. It's important to be able to follow simple basic rules of communication, right? Maintain eye contact, face the person, keep all distractions aside, right? So phone calls, text messages, boyfriend's texting, girlfriend is texting, put that aside for some amount of time. Make sure that you're giving your 100% attention to the person who is sharing, right? And also avoid why questions, right? Try to avoid asking them, but why did you do this, but why did you not do that? Avoid saying you should have done something, right? Because when
Yeah.
you do that, you're also blaming that person by saying, if you had done this, you should have done this, because you didn't do it, this is what is happening to you, right? And that person
Yeah.
becomes very feels very defensive, and they start to feel like it's their fault when it isn't at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So there are very, very important things to keep in mind while we are talking to people. Guide them to a professional support if required, right? Don't force them to go to a therapist or a counselor, but be helpful in that conversation, right? So probably suggest that I could find a therapist for you and fix up an appointment if you'd like. Would you like me to come with you? Don't say you have to go to the therapist, don't talk to me, right? That again is not really going to be very supportive at that point of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now another thing. So let's say if I am going through mental health issues and I want to open up with somebody, so how can I choose that somebody?
All right. So are you talking about a professional somebody, or a somebody within your friends or family circle?
So I want you to focus on both actually. How can I choose that personal somebody and professional somebody? Because how do I know who is
Okay.
a good counselor or not? You know?
All right. So when you're talking about somebody that you've already interacted with in the past, right, whether it's a family member or a friend or somebody at work, reflect on the kind of past experiences that you've had with that person, and the kind of conversations that you had. That did you feel like you were being heard? Did you feel like they were not judging you for the things that you were saying? Do you feel they were being supportive, or do you feel they were listening to you because they had some ulterior motive in mind, right? So those will become your indicators as to whether that might be the right person to approach, or whether you don't want to kind of get them into this entire loop at all, right? So that's very important to keep in mind when you're talking about a professional. When you decide to reach out to a professional and speak to them, it's important to feel comfortable during your first session, right? So if I'm meeting the therapist for the first time, if I'm meeting the counselor for the first time, I will not know till I go in for my appointment and talk to them, right? Now, in my session, do I feel comfortable sharing? Do I feel like the other person is understanding where I'm coming from? Are they judging me, or are they able to understand that it was difficult for me, right? So if I feel safe, if I feel secure, if I feel protected, I will continue my sessions there. If I don't feel very comfortable, I will try to find another counselor, fix up another appointment with them, right? So it's very important to find someone that you feel comfortable with, and doesn't necessarily have to be the first person that you speak to, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
going to another therapist or a counselor can be good in that sense.
And I think whoever is listening or watching, you don't have to worry about the confidentiality. That is the first thing counselors were told, that whatever information you share with them will be confidential forever. So
Yes,
I remember
absolutely.
Ali Quadra used to tell one particular example where if he counsels somebody and if he sees that somebody outside somewhere in the market or a mall, he doesn't go and talk to them.
Yes,
He still
yes,
avoids them because he does, maybe that person may not be comfortable. And if that
true.
person comes and talks to him, he will just say
Then
hi,
it
bye, and
is.
he'll ask normal questions,
Yes,
and then he'll go off. So that's it.
yes,
So, which is a very good thing, I felt. That talks a lot about the
true,
professional ethics of
true.
counselors also.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
but again, you have to find a right counselor, because not everybody whom we meet is a friend. So in the same way,
True.
not every counselor you meet is a good counselor. So you have to be
He's going to be.
aware of it.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
So like that. Cool. Now I
absolutely.
have one final question before we leave, Gayatri, and that is, do counselors need counselors? Like,
Of
do you
course
need
they
counseling?
do.
Do you have a counselor?
Yes. Yes, I do have my own therapist that I speak
Okay.
with, right? And then my head is also just like everybody else's head, right? There's still a lot of jumbled thoughts inside, a lot of negative thoughts there that are there. So I definitely need a therapist, a counselor that I speak to as well.
Okay.
And that's very important.
And how do you like manage it? Because like your profession itself is like, people come to you and they share their problems. I know, like, if one person shares problems with me, I feel so attached to that person, and I feel like, thinking about that person's problem for 2 3 days. So how do you deal with it? Like, so you go and talk to the therapist. What are your coping mechanisms?
So I think it's taken me also a very long time to be able to start learning to deal with that, because there's also a lot of negativity that you're hearing throughout the day, right? Because not everybody's going to come and tell you success stories. Not everyone's telling you positive things that are happening, right? There's a lot of negativity also that we're taking in. But throughout my journey, I've learned one thing, which is it's very important to set boundaries, right? So
Okay.
I don't do sessions on Saturday Sundays. That is my time. So whatever happens, unless it's an extreme emergency case, I don't do sessions on Saturday Sundays, right? Without exceptions, except for emergencies,
Hey,
right?
sorry. Thank you for
Oh,
taking your time in your my time to do this session. Thank you.
not at all. This is not a session, so it's perfectly all right.
Oh,
Yes. And
okay.
somewhere I also need to know what my limitations are, right? So there are
Yeah.
specific issues that I'm not comfortable dealing with.
Okay.
And when I'm honest about that to myself, I'm doing justice to myself. I'm also doing justice to the client who's coming in with that specific issue, right? So then I will
Okay.
refer them to the right appropriate referral, right? So they get the kind of guidance and support that they would like to.
So that
So
keeps
that,
happening, yeah?
that
So if somebody comes to you and you're not comfortable with that particular issue, do you refer them to somebody else? You keep
yes,
doing that?
yes.
Okay.
My very first case like that was in Banjara itself.
Oh, nice. Okay. Super.
Yes.
Okay, now one final question. I'm sorry, I'm asking too many final questions, but this is promise final question. Promise
Final
on
question.
everybody. Yeah, final question. The final question is, what can I do? What can I do to facilitate or remove this taboo about mental health? Me, matlab, not just comedian, a normal person. What can I do
Anyone.
in my capacity? Just tell us three
All right.
points. What can I do
Okay.
to
So
make it?
taboo to
Yeah, yeah,
make it
continue.
kind of a little more okay. So the thing with taboo is we always fear things that we are that are unknown to us, right? So when I don't know what to expect, when I'm not able to predict it, when I can't control it, I become a little apprehensive about it, right? So one of the best ways to reduce that taboo and stigma is to get educated, right? So read up, be a little open to conversations with other people, right? Talk to people who've been going through these issues. Become vulnerable and talk to them about your own issues. Have these kind of open conversations, right? Don't whisper in your conversations about mental health, because that is just kind of reinforcing the fact that you shouldn't speak about mental health aloud, right? So
Yeah,
be confident when you're talking about it. Like it's just like your physical health, right? If I have fever,
yeah,
I'm not going to go and whisper that to someone else, right? So the more comfortable you are about talking about mental health, the more comfortable the people around you will be as well,
yeah.
right? So read up, talk to people, and be confident about your own conversations with people.
Okay, and so let's say, for example, if somebody is not willing to put in the efforts, we are trying our best. All of us are trying our best because right now, what I feel is this is one particular topic which I think all of us need to talk about in an open manner,
Hmm.
which we
Hmm.
are still not reaching. And also, there are a lot of what is it? They just put down certain things. When somebody says, "I have depression," every comedian has
Hmm.
a depression. So there are a lot of generalizations which happen. And I
Yes.
think we're all fighting. And thank you so much for doing this session today. I hope you had a good time. I also had a
Thank
good
you.
time. There are few
Cool.
questions which there are there, so we will just take one or two questions and then we will end it. Okay,
All
so
right.
somebody is
Sure.
asking, is Gayatri available for sessions out of her place? I am from Andhra Pradesh and need help with kids.
Yes.
So that
So
is
I
one
do
question.
telephonic sessions as of now.
Okay. So can I leave your email ID in the description so they can reach out to you? And is
Yes.
that okay?
You can definitely do that. You can leave my email ID. Yes.
Okay. And another question is, why do we have a sense of uncertainty during this period, like this period as in pandemic?
All right. So I think the main reason for that is because we don't know how it's going to play out, right? We don't know
Okay.
what's going to happen in 2022. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow even, right? It's the first time we're actually going through a pandemic. It's not like the IPL or the 2020 matches where we know the process, we know when it's going to start, we know how long it's going to last, and we know when it's going to get over, right? With this pandemic, it's the first time that any of us is actually living through a global pandemic like this, right? So when we don't know what to expect tomorrow, that uncertainty is going to be there, and it is going to create some amount of tension and worry in us. That is natural, right? So if you didn't experience all of that, that would become a bit of a worrying thing sometimes, right? So it's
Okay.
perfectly natural to feel worried, to feel apprehensive.
So it is okay to feel uncertainty at this time. So you just
Yes.
it will pass away eventually. So don't worry about it. Vaccines are out and my comedy shows are also out. So I'm sure we will fight this uncertainty. I'm also plugging in my comedy shows. We have to. I'm a comedian. So there are like few more questions. Okay. One person is asking whom to consult for sleeplessness of a 58-year-old woman, a psychologist or a psychiatrist.
Okay, so first I would like them to speak to a general physician, because a lot of times there are physical roots to these kind of issues, right? So speak to a
Okay.
doctor if they say everything is perfectly all right, nothing to worry about, and the problem still persists, then speak to a psychologist, right? But first, general physician would be the way to go.
Okay. Okay. One final question, Gayatri, and this is one question. A lot of people I heard from a lot of people, and that question I think is all mental health problems are only with the people who are organized and economically above poverty line. Did you see any poor people talking about such mental health issues?
All right. So
I
mental
think they
health.
don't talk. I think they don't talk because they don't have access, right?
So everyone has mental health, right? Just the way you have physical health, you have mental health. Now, having mental health issues, right? So problems with your mental health is there as long as you have life, right? If you're living, breathing, eating, you will definitely have some issue or the other, right? It's just like our physical health. Someday this my knee is hurting, someday my tooth is hurting, someday I have a fever, headache, this, that. It's never that I will live my entire life with zero physical complaints, right? It's the same with mental health issues as well. So one day I'll be feeling low, one day I'll be feeling extra worried, anxious, and that's normal, right? It's normal to have those kind of
Yeah.
ups and downs. So everyone, irrespective of class, irrespective of region, religion, anything, everyone can experience mental health
So
issues.
I think most of the times, whoever it is, sometimes, let's say, for example, if I am going through some mental health issues, I may not potentially reach out to a counselor, but I may reach out in some very rare cases to a friend who plays a role of counselor to me. Like I would talk to him, and then probably everything would be fine.
Feel better.
Sometimes it happens. Like only when it is really not manageable at a personal level, then probably I can reach out to a counselor and see what I can do with it.
Yes.
But I think this discussion will keep going on. I hope more people talk about mental health like the way we did today.
True.
And thank you so much for joining. After a long time, I think we had this much discussion. So hopefully, I'll try to meet you in person when I come to Bangalore. Please come to one of my shows.
Definitely.
You have been
I will. This
promising
time I
me
will.
from last
Yes.
8 years. You remember, like last year, I had to go to a counselor because you are not coming to my shows.
See, you should have just come
Uh,
and taken a session with me.
okay, fine. But thank you, Gayatri, for
Or I will
joining.
come. Yes.
I
Yes.
hope all of you watched. You guys had a good time. I know it's not my usual comedy kind of a session. This is a serious topic, so I think we gave the respect which this topic deserves. And Gayatri, thank you so much again. I can't thank you enough because you have been such a wonderful person and a wonderful counselor. I'll leave Gayatri's email ID. You can reach out to her if she has time. Probably she will help you, or she will refer to somebody else. So thank you so much, everybody. Please take care of yourself and your loved ones. Good night. Take care.
Thank you.